So hello, Tinus, how are you?
Hi, Maka. I'm well, thanks. How are you?
Fine, thank you, Tinus. And I'm very happy to have you here in this space of CPTED Talk.
Well, it's nice to be here, and it sounds very important. This CPTED talk sounds very great. Yes.
Yeah, it has been quite an adventure to start this channel, but it's very interesting to know different opinions of different leaders of sectors all around the world.
Yeah, no, I think it's a very good initiative from your side, and it's good, as you say, because we know that this organization is international and not everyone is the same. So it's great. I look forward to contributing.
Great, Tinus. I will start reading your biography. You have an extensive biography, so many years of work applying CPTED and research. So I will start reading it, and then we start with the questions, if you agree.
That's fine with me. And just one thing, when you have an extensive biography, it means you're old.
No, you don't look old, Tinus. You are the same that I met 20 years ago.
That's true. That's true. Okay, sorry, I will stop now.
So I will start. Tinus started his career in January 1919 at the Council of Scientific and Industrial Research, CSIR, in Pretoria, South Africa. In the more than 30 years at the CSIR, Tinus has held various research and managerial positions. He is currently the research group leader of the Housing and Urban Studies House group in the CSIR Smart Places Cluster. Between 2016 and 2018, he was a visiting professor at the Urban Futures Center of the Durban University of Technology. Tinus is a registered architect and has been involved with a wide range of research and development initiatives related to human settlement planning, design, and management. These include projects dealing with people-driven housing and development, municipal infrastructure, appropriate water and sanitation technologies, community-based crime prevention policing, and crime prevention through environmental design, CPTED. He is currently involved in an initiative to understand the concept of smart cities within the South African context, focusing on the development of inclusive smart cities. Tinus has been involved with various aspects of CPTED since 1997, focusing in particular on crime prevention within the context of developing countries. He has been involved with initiatives such as community-based CPTED and safety audits, crime mapping, developing CPTED and general crime prevention strategies, preparing CPTED guidelines, and conducting training workshops on CPTED and development of community safety plans. Tinus has authored and co-authored a number of publications, including Making South Africa Safe, a manual for community-based crime prevention, Designing Safer Places, a manual for crime prevention through planning and design, and the Neighborhood Planning and Design Guide. He has been a member of the International CPTED Association, ICA, since 1999 and a board member since 2004. He's currently the Vice President of the ICA. So welcome, dear Vice President.
Thank you, my President.
I'm very glad to have you here. Your curriculum is incredible, super extensive, and also very similar what you have done in developing countries as we are doing here in the Hispanic region. So because of that, I think this interview, of course, will be very useful for our audience in the Hispanic region also. I want to start asking the typical question. How did you start in CPTED, Tinus?
Well, Maka, yes, as you say, it's a long time ago. We've known each other 20 years, and my involvement started, I would say, in 1997, 1998, completely out of the blue. I was working at the CSIR in a field that was more related to housing and people's housing process, and then we got a contract to support what was then just launched in 1996 in South Africa called the National Crime Prevention Strategy. And it had 4 pillars. And one of the pillars was crime prevention through environmental design. Now, you must know that in 1996, when they wrote that, CPTED was not something that we've ever heard of in South Africa. Never. And
I can imagine.
yeah, and I'm sure it was similar in your case. So they wanted someone to do research and to say, what does that pillar mean? That pillar that is in the crime prevention strategy for the country that says environmental design, but no one knows what it means. So we got a contract, and I was asked if I wouldn't manage it. I wasn't even involved in writing the proposal. When we got it, they suddenly, I think everyone got a fright when we got the contract. So that's where my life changed completely. So we did research, basic real research in 3 cities in South Africa, literally trying to understand what is that relationship between crime and the physical environment. And for the first time ever in South Africa, we looked at crime in place. So how does place relate to crime and crime prevention? And we went to Durban, Cape Town, and Johannesburg, and we did everything possible. We even in the time we drove with the police to the hotspots to try and understand what happens, and we looked at how they arrested people and how the environment played a role in what the people did. So it was a very exciting research project. And then I think, Maka, we've spoken about this before. That's where it differs between us and what happened in Chile. From our side, we got research funds. So we worked with the police and with other organizations such as the Institute for Security Studies to draft manuals on what is crime prevention through environmental design. And that's the one that you've mentioned, the Designing Safer Places. But we did not have money, and also because we're a research organization, to implement. So we had to be satisfied with trying to tell others how to do it, basically. Whereas I think in Chile, you first started by getting money to change the environment. Yeah, you did projects, which we always thought was great, because you could show people what you were doing. We could never.
Yeah.
Since then, of course, many organizations have not only taken up our manual, but they've developed further. And I mean, a lot of things have changed. When we did the research, we used books, you know, the real hard copy paper books to do our research. The internet wasn't really the source. Nowadays, you can just Google it and you can get it. So that's how it started. We developed it further specifically for our conditions in South Africa, trying to understand how you would do it in the poorest of the poor communities. And that's where we started with community-driven CPTED. Even at the time then, this community safety walkabouts that everyone is doing nowadays, we did not know about that in South Africa. We developed it based on our history in the people-driven housing processes. So that's how we transformed the housing work that we did into crime prevention work. And I'm going to stop now because it's 20 years.
But it's a great starting point. And this connects with my second question. Can you explain a little to the audience how is the crime context in South Africa and also in your region? Because you're also regional director of ICA. So I know the context must be explained because it's a complex context.
Yes. Let me first start off by saying that because I am involved in crime and crime prevention work in South Africa, but I also, in a sense, have to look at what happens in the rest of Africa. We must understand that the different countries in Africa differ substantially from each other, from a crime perspective and from social perspectives as well. So I'm going to tell you that in South Africa, most people know our crime problem is immense. We have, our crime levels are just too high. It is just not the way it should be. But even worse than that is the levels of violence that goes with that. I know that our murder rate is just through the roof. We do know that interpersonal crime is way worse than it should be. Burglaries and robberies, they are all high. And the worst is that they are not only high where let's call it the more affluent, amongst the more affluent people, they're also high where in the poorest of the poor communities. And that to me is the sad part of all this. Because if you do not have much, you have a bicycle to travel to work and your bicycle gets stolen, it is a devastating, it has a devastating impact on the whole community or your whole family, because you may be the only breadwinner. So crime, I cannot emphasize that the problem that we face with crime has a severe impact on the effect that CPTED can have. And I know that. I've said that many times at conferences. Something that would work in another setting would most certainly not work in South Africa, because people are willing to use violence and they're willing to hurt you if, for instance, the eyes on the street concept may not always work because people are not willing to intervene. Okay, so that's it. In the rest of Africa, we have different, it is inexplicable sometimes that in some countries, the crime levels would be extremely low, and in the neighboring country, it would be similar to ours. So it's not a homogeneous sort of like spread throughout Africa, we can say. Different countries, completely different circumstances.
Yes, I remember when we presented together a paper with Robert Stephens. You remember that? It was called CPTED Extreme. I think you put the name.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it's completely a very correct name regarding what you are describing as context.
Yes, yes, because if you deal with a situation where crime levels are so high and the willingness to commit some violent act is there, you have a different situation.
Completely. And what can you say, for example, about gate communities there? I always was very interested about what is happening in gate communities in South Africa. Here in Chile and in other countries of Hispanic region, we have many gate communities. Communities think that if they get in a gate community, they will be more safe. What is happening with that topic there in South Africa?
Yes, interesting and very controversial topic in South Africa, Macarena. We did some research quite some time ago at the CSR. One of my colleagues did a specific project on that, one of the people in my group. So the questions people always ask you is, does it reduce crime? Because we have many, obviously in the more affluent areas, middle class to higher income areas. And the response is always yes and no. And I think to me, that is the critical thing. People think immediately if they're in a gated community, they're a lot safer. That the problem that we face then sometimes is that people become lax and they don't lock their doors anymore. They don't do this. And then crime still happens. That's the one aspect that but it's obviously got other benefits to people as well. The lifestyle that you can enjoy and some other. So it's a very difficult thing. There's a lot of those. We find that in the very poor communities, people are more and more demanding that they also want to have a wall around them. They are willing in some cases, which in research that we found, that they would rather have a slightly smaller house, but as long as they can have a wall around their little community. The more controversial gated community that we have in South Africa is where people want to close off existing roads. And that is causing it causes fights at community meetings. Because given South Africa's history of apartheid, it is a sensitive issue that you are now restricting people's movement again. So again, in some cases, it works. And in other cases, with research that we did fairly recently, yes, the housebreakings reduced considerably. But what happened, it was just now, the criminals were still getting in. So they just stole cars that were standing on the street. So it's a difficult situation as well to say it will most certainly work. Obviously, a lot of people in South Africa do that for a living. That's their business to close off streets. And they will tell you that it works every time and it works beautifully. We find that it's not always the case.
Yeah, I agree. It's a very controversial issue, but also it connects with one of our main concepts all around the world, that is context, that we need to respect context.
Yes, and I think you're absolutely right, especially in South Africa, something that is a huge issue, and that is the perceptions and fear of crime. And because it's so high, I mean, most people know someone who's been a victim of crime. I've been a victim of crime just burglaries, around about 15 times in my lifetime. Just, you know, house and car thefts. So you're aware of it. But that fear, some people will do anything to reduce their fear of crime, and gated communities, unfortunately, is for most people the ultimate answer.
Yes, I imagine, Tinus. And now with the COVID context, it must be increasing the fear, I imagine, or not?
It's a very interesting thing. It's not necessarily increasing the fear, because up to now that our restrictions have been lifted for the large part, but up to now, in certain communities, we were not allowed to go out, not allowed. So fear reduced in those areas, because you knew that your area is a fairly law-abiding area, and people will not be in the streets because they will be so visible if they're in the streets, because they're not allowed to be. In the poorer areas, life continued as normal, despite the lockdown, despite the restrictions. And obviously, that's where crime still prevailed, but it came down quite a lot. And I think it didn't have necessarily the effect that I'm aware of on perceptions. But in reality, our crimes obviously reduced considerably.
Mm-hmm. I want to shift you to another arena, the ICA arena. You have been always a very relevant figure in our ICA family. You have worked much for ICA. So I want to ask you, how did you start in ICA and your first years in ICA? Can you describe to the audience, please?
Okay, now you want me to remember really long way back, because no, Marka, I can remember it so well. I went to the first conference, I think it was in 1999 in Mississauga, which is just next to Toronto in Canada, and having no clue whatsoever what this is about. I just read that it links to the research that we've just started in 1998. And I thought, this is brilliant. I'm going to learn a lot. Also, little did I know that it will become my family for the next 20 years. So Mississauga was my first conference. I was completely flabbergasted by the knowledge and the enthusiasm and just the sharing of the people that I met there. And also the people that we read about their work in like I said, read from paper copies of books. We read the books, and it was great to see them. And the next year, I think I couldn't go, but from then on, I have been to almost all the conferences. And obviously then we met in Calgary. I think it was just after that, and realized that we are both working in the developing world context. And I just couldn't leave it after that.
We get close friends from the beginning, yes. And because we came from similar contexts, you're right.
Absolutely. I think that's what we've always said from the start, that look how it has changed. I mean, the ICA grew from humble beginnings, but it suddenly had a lot of people, but from the developed world. So when we started, I think, look where we stand now. Look how you are. Look what you did in South America. Look what you did. So many people joined.
Oh, thank you. But it's not myself only. we are also a Hispanic family, accepted family.
That's correct. Yes, you have a very special sort of Hispanic family part of the ICA now as well.
Yeah, completely. And Tinus, I want to ask you about your current leadership in the ICA. You now are leading you are the vice president also, but you are leading a very strategic committee. That is the International ICA Conference Committee. Can you explain to the audience why it is so relevant to lead that committee, and what can we expect for the future?
Okay, Maka, I think just as some background, because people may not know this, when the ICA started, even before I joined, the conference was in a different city every year. Then I think it just became a bit difficult, and it was decided for a time that it will be held in Calgary, because that's where the executive director at the time lived, and it was easier to arrange the conference there. But as time went on, we also realized that we want to reach other parts of the world. And I think it was the first conference that we held outside of Calgary, then after they started holding it, was the one in Chile, if I'm not.
In Chile,
if I'm,
2005, yeah.
2005 in Santiago, which you hosted there. So I think that showed us that there is an opportunity for us to do it in other cities, but we also realized that it's difficult for an organization to do that if you do not know, in your case, we knew you, but if you do not know the people, you have to be very rigorous. You have to be very sure that the conference will be held. So I think what we also did realize that it is an expensive exercise and we do not have that many funds. So we started with a 2-year conference every 2 years. Yeah. And I think what we have realized over the past few years, where we went to conferences in Mexico, in Honduras, and then again now in Cancun, we also realized how it impacts on the country where we have the conference. The value that it adds to the country and the value that it adds to all the participants in the conference from all over the world to see what happens there. So we've now followed a process. I think it's also the first time where we're really now going to get submissions in that form, where we've asked for expressions of interest so that people can say they would like to be considered for a full proposal for the conference. And where we stand now with that is that we've received some submissions. We as a committee now have to look at the submissions of the expressions of interest, and one can do a number of things. You can say it's not that many. We give all of them an opportunity to submit full proposals, which we will then evaluate according to certain criteria. But I think the importance of this is that it's from different parts of the world, and we can now give people the opportunity to, again, if they become the host based on this really rigorous process, and we do due diligence to the awarding of the, I almost want to say contract, but it's awarding them the conference. We may even say that we now also have others that may want to do it the next time if they're not successful this time. Yes. And that is great because we now have the opportunity to really spread our wings further throughout the world. So I'm very excited about the proposals that we received. I think they're all worthy, and it would be very difficult for us to make that decision. But obviously, we will do it with the due care and diligence that the organization is known for.
Of course, and I am very happy also of your leadership and of the process you are setting with the committee. But also we need to clarify that we are talking about the global conference, but in the meantime, because the global conference is each 2 years, but it can, each year or any region can also launch a regional one. So it's not the only one, the global conference.
Yes, absolutely. And I think that is something that one should, I'm glad that you mentioned that. We should not forget that we could also support, as the ICA, support conferences that could be held in parts of Australia, for instance, or in the UK or in Europe. And we would support it with the ICA name, and could even attend send one or two people there from the board to attend, to make it an internationally local conference.
And also it shows that we are a very vibrant network with many stakeholders and actors that want to realize a conference and perform conference. So that's very good for the association.
Yes, no, it is good news. I was worried, especially now with COVID, that people are not going to be keen to commit to anything. But again, people are resilient. They were keen. They submitted. So it's nice.
Yeah, so we hope we will have a great conference in the future, Tinus. And I want to ask you another question regarding the benefits of becoming an active ICA member, because you were the ICA director that started moving forward the description of the benefits of becoming an active ICA member. Can you explain those benefits, please?
Yes, Macarena, and I think when we did that, when we tried to put into words what the benefits are, I'm not sure about you, but I found it difficult to put into words something that is something that you feel, that is not always a tangible thing that you can say, oh, well, I got a nice gift pack when I joined. So I've got a new pen and I've got a new bag and I feel, and you know what, and every year I get something. It's not that. With the ICA, and that's why we call it a family, as we've done before, the key benefit is the contacts that you're making, and contacts not in the sense of just someone that you know via email. It's a contact that becomes someone that you know, and that you know that you can trust. We, unfortunately, a lot of it depends on the conference, because that's where you see each other, and I'm not at all convinced, especially now in COVID, it's convinced me more and more that online is not the same as in person. It just cannot replace personal contact. And that's what those conferences do. So I think the key for me here is the personal links and networks that you make. Now, of course, linked to that is the access to a lot of documents that you may not otherwise be aware of. It's the access to even to competencies and skills and experiences from other countries that could assist you in your particular area. We've seen it fairly recently now with a new member that would send out a WhatsApp and say, can someone help me? I have to do this. Any ideas, or what should I read? And before you know it, people send information and link to documents. And that, to me, I think we've struggled in the past a little bit with that. There was a time when it went up and it was good, and then it was a bit of a slump. I think with your initiatives that you've started now with the board, with more communication, I think it's just going to get better and better. And I cannot understand that in my country, here in South Africa, people are so not interested in belonging to an organization such as this. They not just, and I still have to find the magic touch that you guys have in Latin America. I just cannot get people, they're excited about this. I had a call again this morning about training, but they're not, they don't understand the benefit of joining. Yeah. To me, it's a bit of a worry, because I can tell you now that if people, once they've joined, they will see that.
We hope that this interview helps to promote more and to spread the word of CPTED there in Africa, in South Africa also.
Yes, let's hope. What I will do is I will see if I can put it on national television.
Oh, wow. This would be fun. But we can send the message to all the audience in Africa. Please contact Tinus, because he is willing to spread the word in the African context.
Yes.
And my final question, Tinus, can you give your closing remarks? It's not a question, but can you give your closing remarks to highlight a very relevant message for the audience?
I've sort of, in a sense, said something that I wanted to slip in somewhere, and that is the fact that I'm struggling to understand why some people are just not interested in joining an organization, in any organization, but also specifically this one. So if I could find get an understanding of how to get people to pay a small amount to get a huge benefit, that's the one thing that I would like to do as the vice president still. I have been trying and I still can't do it. So that is something that I want to achieve, that, to get more people from Africa and South Africa to join. So that would be one of, as you say, one of the things that this video could perhaps, this interview could do. But then on the other hand, I also think that we should really not only think of context, Maka, as developing country and developed country context. There are so many micro contexts that I think we should also be aware of. And every now and again, I get the feeling that people sort of almost look down on CPTED in its original form, in the sense that, you know, it's just about locks and lights and that. And something that I've been playing with in my mind is, if that works in a specific community, in that context, we should not knock people like that for saying, you just haven't moved with the times. CPTED is about a lot more. It is about a lot more. But if that is what worked in that context, let it be. If we, in our context, do a lot more with the community and with other types of things, that's what we need in our context. And we should not play the two off against each other as if they are opposing, they're complementing. And I think that, to me, really, it's the context again can be a micro context in a community where that makes all the difference and people feel safe. Let it be. Let it be.
Yeah.
Let's not label everything and say it's old style CPTED. It's still working. And that's perhaps where I want to stop.
I agree with you. We are connected in our differences. And this is something very relevant to accept and to give to that idea value, because it will make the International CPTED Association a very vibrant and diverse network.
Yes, no, you're right. We've learned a lot when we started from the people that were working in a developed country context. We didn't just take it, we adapted it. And I think people do that everywhere. We adapt it, but it still has value, because that's where you learn. That's how you learn.
Yeah, completely agree. So thank you so much, dear Tinus, for being part of this interview. I want to say to the audience, please, if you like this video, give us a like and become a subscribe, an active member of CPTED Talk channel. And see you as soon as possible, Tinus.
Yes, Maka, let's hope. We definitely want COVID to be over by the time we have a conference so that we can see each other again.
So bye-bye, Tinus.